Dubois here live in San Francisco. And tonight we're going to talk about Tantra, yoni power, psychic sexuality, and all that woo woo sex energy crap. What the hell's all the real deal here? Because honestly, I really don't buy into it. And I'm going to explain 20 years ago how I got my start in sexuality. And this is something for everyone to really listen up because you might actually learn a thing or two. Now, 20 years ago, I got my start in sexuality because I stumbled upon Tantra, and it was getting pretty widespread out in Arizona and California. And a lot of people were talking about how it could change you from the inside out. So, if you had experienced sexual trauma like I did, and we'll go into that here in a moment, um, that it could be the cure all and make you become orgasmic and enjoy sexuality in a way that would be mind blowing and spiritual. So, anyways, I was this young blonde with big blue eyes, very curious about how this was going to change me and change me forever, right? And so I learned from people like Baba Dez, who is the male founder of ISTA, which is the International School of Temple Arts. Back then, oh, it wasn't even a website. It was a house in Sedona with different rooms with massage tables and beds, sometimes mattresses on the floor. And you would go in and you would learn the sacred art of touching. From there, I learned from Tracy Elise and other people of the industry who are well known figures today. Now, mind you, this is before social media. This is before people had websites, so everything was hush hush. In order to find Tantra, you had to look in the back of a classified magazine, right? A classified, adult classifieds, and you would skim and you would go, okay, what is this? Sacred touch. The ambiguities allowed them to practice and get initiates. And becoming initiated into Tantra was something that I experienced very, very young. So let's go into sexual trauma for a moment. A lot of people, 1 out of 3, have experienced sexual trauma before the age of 18. 1 out of 3 people. That means there's 3 people sitting in this room, and one of us, if not all, have experienced some kind of a boundary where we said no and didn't explicitly get that, no reinforced. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened before the age of 18 and why would someone so young seek out sexual healing, right? And get caught up into this realm. So, I lost my virginity to being raped. I was 14 years old. It was a winter experience. It was a boy I knew, and I had crushed on him for a very long time. He held my face into a pillow and sodomized me, and I thought that was sex. And that was not the only experience, right? So I wonder what your experiences are like. I really do. As a woman, as a man, or however you gender identify, what led you down the path of addressing your sexual trauma, right? So, anyways, after the age of 14, I, seemed to just bury it all. And bury it all I did. And by the time I was 16, I was madly in love with this boy named Christopher Acapenti from Commerce, Georgia. I met him on a street corner. No, not that kind of, but he was actually panhandling, and he was this punk rocker. He was so hot. And I was really into punk rock music. And during this generational time in Chicago and in the Midwest, Milwaukee, Madison, the punk rock scene was heavy, right? And I considered myself a punk rocker. I actually had a mohawk and I had a Chelsea, which means that your hair was shaved and you just had bangs. So I was pretty much a wild child. Anyway, so I meet this hot punk rocker, and within 2 months, he's dead. Madly in love with him. He was pushed from a building and fell and cracked his head open onto cement. So I found out what losing someone you're madly in love with was you're madly in love with was like at a very young age. And then from then on, like I experienced a date rape at 17. I don't really remember it because I was highly intoxicated on alcohol. And at 17, which pushed me into the United States Air Force, was an experience that was forever changed my life, set me on this path of who I am today. A martial artist. I have multiple black belts in various styles. I own Guardian Self Defense, and I'm also an advocate for women and sex workers' rights. So at 17, I am walking down a street in Madison, Wisconsin, and a friend of mine goes, "Oh, it'd be really cool. Let's go score some drugs." I was not into drugs, by the way. I could barely handle my liquor. I was skinny. I was blonde. So we go to this place, and she proceeds to get like a dime bag of marijuana, right? And this is in the 90s. So, I mean, like, oh, it's all hush hush. Nowadays, everyone has marijuana, right? But back then, that's a drug. And, anyway, so we go get, drugs. And then we find out that, you know, my friend has to go to this other house and she's going to leave me there. And the circumstance means I'm left alone in this room with all these different guys. And the next thing I know, they're all high, and I think they're on PCP, angel dust, mixed with their marijuana. And the next thing I know, I'm getting suffocated with a plastic bag around my head. And I was brutally raped by multiple men. So, what led me into the path of sexuality and Tantra was the fact that my energy had become dormant. My energy as a woman, as a strong woman, had become dormant. And that was primarily due to the fact that whenever someone touched me, I would cower and I would cry. And so it took me until I went into the Air Force at 18. I came back out, became a reservist at 20. I met my husband, who is a wonderful man and got me into understanding the different forms of psychology to release PTSD and trauma, which I had a lot of. And so from there, what we did was I went and I learned as much as I could about sexuality and to release what had happened to me as a very young child from 14. Lucky I have really great parents. I just was a really dumb, wily teenager. I was good looking. I like boys. I like parties. I just happened to put myself into those situations. So anyways, I ended up learning Tantra from these founders who built these great organizations around sexuality. And at the time, like I said, the money was not there. So they were teaching sacred practices inside their homes, and you would have to be invited to learn these sacred arts of sexuality, like Tantra, Yoni power, psychic sexuality, right? And there were experimentation done. In fact, my husband created a copper wall room. There's some old pictures actually of this copper wall room where we would do sexual meditations for hours, naked, holding one another. And this is a very young age, like 20, 21, 22. And we're starting to develop our understanding of how powerful sexual energy really is, right? So, my question to you all, if one in three of you watching this right now, doesn't matter however you gender identify, has been explicitly raped, molested, abused, had a partner that was a narcissist, you know, I want to know. Or how about this? Had a lover that degraded you after the sexual experience, and not the kind of fun degrading that happens in a dungeon. I'm talking about the experiences that really make us cower and make us turn off. I want you to think about that for a moment because I'm going to give you guys stories, not just my own personal stories, but stories that you can all relate to as men and as women about sexuality. Now, when you're in college or maybe in your young 20s, you begin to explore your sexuality, like, because you're like, well, fuck, I'm not at my parents' house anymore. Like, I can run free and wild. And so you end up, having, and this is something that I've seen. I actually have a very young roommate here in San Francisco. She's wonderful. And she's on all these dating sites, right? She's on all these dating sites. So she goes out with a new guy every other night. And she's so terribly disappointed in the sexual experiences. She tells me these stories about how men can't touch her. They're willing and able to go all the way and have sex with her, but it's like they're there but not there. You guys ever have that experience where you're having sex with someone and you're like, are you awake? What's going on in there? They're gone. They're somewhere else completely. They're disassociated. Now, is that about you? Because what we begin to do is question ourselves, right? We start to question ourselves like, are we attractive? Is this person like closing their eyes, turning off the lights, doesn't want to engage in conversation with me, doesn't want to give me words of affirmation about my body or how good the sex is, doesn't even give me a good sigh or a compliment to know that the sexual experience is going well, right? Because as women are always looking for validation. It's our father wound. And I'll go more into the father wound. We're always looking for this validation of some sort from the masculine figure. And so if the masculine is traumatized, disassociated, or watching just a lot of porn, so they don't know what real sex is like, then that person that you're having sex with, like my young roommate that's in college here at the University of San Francisco, who tells me about these guys who close their eyes and go somewhere else, and she doesn't even know if they're thinking about her, right? Because she doesn't get any affirmation. She doesn't know. She goes, do they even like me? And so she's in this consistent cycle of feeling rejected during this sexual experience. And so many women are experiencing this. They're experiencing this because so many men they're obsessed with pornography. They're creating AI to have a girlfriend. I mean, how pathetic. Today, I had a guy threaten to kill himself because I would not do session work with him. Young man, 35 years old. I had to call the police. Because now he's a threat to himself. And all he does is watch porn. He can't even develop a healthy relationship with a woman. For Christ's sakes, it's easy. It starts with really owning the fact that as a man, you have emotions. You don't need to bottle them up. You can express your emotions. This is why women want to talk and men want to retreat. And I'll explain why. Because as a young child, most men are given the message to be quiet, to man up, to keep it zipped, that if you fall, that impact that bruised your leg, that made you bleed is nothing, right? Because you're a man, you should be stoic. You should not cry. So here comes all of these messages of Disney implanted into your mind that you're supposed to be this romantic provider to women. And you can't even live up to the fact that, getting a college education now, maybe 50,000 a year, living in San Francisco on 50,000 a year? Hell fucking no. How can you do that? You can't. But they are doing it. And so they're living with roommates or they're living with their parents and they try to hook up with all these girls and they just can't provide. And this is where it's really coming down to people like the 35-year-old man who threatened to kill himself today, talking to me about how he has never had a girlfriend since high school. He's 35 years old. So let's talk about how, and this is something beautiful because Vince Kelvin, one of the best seduction expert on the planet. And if you've never studied with him, good friend of mine, the best. He talked today about how most people end up, even if they're in a marriage, feeling empty, feeling disconnected. And also, if we look at divorce, we know that divorce, high rates, just like rape, 1 out of 3 people now get divorced. I think the percentage here in California, just because it's the coastal elites, and coastal elites have a tendency to be more restless and not have children. Okay, so they're career oriented because look, if you live on the coast, you're going to be paying double than you would in, let's say, Madison, Wisconsin, right? So you can't have a family because you can't afford a house. And if you can't provide for your family, what does that mean about you, especially as a man? And that's why people are retreating, right? They're not going after the young generation's not having families, right? And everyone wants an explanation. Well, explanation's pretty much in your face. How is $50,000, $49,000, $69,000 if you got a master's degree going to support a woman that has to take maternity leave and the child? Plus the mortgage, plus the food in their bellies, plus you got to make her happy and take her on a vacation. How are you going to do that? Right? So they're checking out. And that's normal. But they're checking out so much that the sex is now ruined once they finally get it. And I'm hearing this from women. I'm hearing this from all generations that are single. Women who are married. I had a man. I love him. One of my favorite students paid me a lot of money. Paid me more than you guys, more than, whatever nice car you drive, to go out and work with his wife. His beautiful wife. She's gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. And I asked her, I go, I don't care about him. I care about you. What do you want? What do you want to learn? And she says, I want to learn to get him to clean up the house. And I thought she wanted to learn how to brainwash people and extract millions of dollars and get the person at the bank to give you a bucket full of cash, because you can do that, by the way. But no one wants to talk about it in hypnosis. The hypnosis community wants to stay as clinical and ethical as possible. But what we're getting at is that she just wanted him to organize and clean the house and a little bit of romance. Romance is an ambiguity, because when we think of romance, we think of Valentine's Day. We think of, oh, geez, another box of candy. And then she's going to complain, is my butt fat? That's what we really think about when we think about romance. Romance has this weird connotation to it, almost an insidious nature, something that you can't live up to, right? And that's primarily to the media messages that we've seen in Disney and marketing campaigns, and, that romance is only one day a year, Valentine's Day. So I want you guys to really think about this. Are you disassociated during sex because you watch too much pornography? I like porn. I'm a porn producer. That's how I got popular. That's how I've made all my money. I've been producing pornography for 20 years. Not myself in the videos, by the way. I was smart enough to stay off camera. Why? Because I come from a very religious family. So, but I really want you guys to think about this. Is porn screwing up your marriage? Is it screwing up your relationships? Is it screwing up your ability to orgasm? And this is why in our new program, and I'm going to be traveling the world teaching it because it's so profound, it is simply sexual energy. It is simply how to touch the human body and create addictive states. Because what I'm seeing is both men and women. Women are just so tired of men. They're just tired of men. They're just angry now. They're angry because Kamala Harris did not get elected. So you're going to get a lot more feminism, by the way. It's just going to be more prevalent in culture and society. They're fed up. And they have all the right in the world to be fed up because they're brought up on messages as well that men should be providers. And now men are checking out and they're pointing fingers at women saying women are the problem. Women want men to make $200,000 a year. Women want all these things done for them. Right? Women are the problem, they're saying. But the real issue is that we got to look inside our individual self and see if we have agency. Do we have self-agency to go out and make the decision for change? For example, if I have you think about your sex life for a moment. Just think about your sex life for a moment. What it's like, what do you see, what do you feel? And you go 5 years out from today and you've made absolutely no change. You've made absolutely no change. You go 5 years from today, looking back at today, and you've made no changes. None. Nada. What does your sexual experiences look like? I'm curious. If you do not make a decision to change at some point in your life around your sexuality, you will get the same patterns of behavior. And that means you'll be sitting on places like FetLife.com, Pornhub, looking at your porn, quote unquote, saying that you have a fetish and kink, but you've never experienced it in real life. That to me means you don't have a fetish or kink because you don't experience it in real life. Watching it on a screen does not mean that you have a fetish or kink. It just means that you're scrolling. That was Paul. He's awesome as the producer. So, if you're scrolling, I'm sorry, I have all these people who say, oh, I have a nylon fetish. Well, have you ever worn nylons? No. Okay. Then you don't have a nylon fetish. Have you ever made love to a woman who's wearing nylons for you, sexually, explicitly, to get you off on that kink and that fetish? No. No woman will ever do that for me. Those are the statements that I hear. Today, mailbag, I got a question. Text to me, and this is very interesting. A very interesting question. And it comes from Freddie. Let's see here. Freddie called in from, he's 48 years old. He's from Florida. He writes, I would like to know if seeing escorts is a bad addiction. Okay, let me repeat his question to me. I would like to know if seeing escorts is a bad addiction. Well, one, how do you define an addiction? I mean, we can go into the DSM-V and get a definition based on clinical psychology. But let's not go there. Is seeing an escort a bad thing? This is a moral judgment. He's looking to have me morally answer his question. Because an addiction to me, like how many times a day are you seeing an escort? How many escorts a day are you fucking? Are you completely broke, living in the back of your car because you give it all to escorts? Has your wife left you and the 2 kids and they took all your money and you live in the back of your Honda Civic and you blow it on streetwalkers? Like, I don't know what addiction is. I don't know your serious issue. You're looking for a moral answer. Now, here's the beautiful thing about prostitution. It is a profession. And it's a profession just like engineering. It's a profession just like being an artist, being a lawyer. And once we remove the stigma of this profession, can we actually make judgment calls? We have laws in place here in the United States and throughout the world that define the morality around prostitution. They also do it with lawyers. They also do it with doctors. They also do it with teachers. Every profession has laws and moral ethics boards. The problem we have in the United States is that prostitution is not legal. And so, because it's not legal, we think of it as something taboo, naughty, dirty. Marijuana is actually a good example, right? Marijuana itself, I had 2 friends that go to federal prison that were up in the Emerald Triangle for growing fucking weed, man. Literally, one of them went to fucking 5 years in federal prison, had 3 daughters, and guess what? He was a single dad. So his daughters had to get raised by the system. He was a good man. He didn't even smoke his crop. He was a business guy. And, when they put him in federal prison, he sat there. He pled the fucking 5th because he didn't want to rat out his buddies. And that's how he ended up in prison for 5 years. I think he's a very honorable man. I think he's a great man. But marijuana is a juxtaposition to prostitution. The moment prostitution gets legalized, it's no longer going to be considered dirty like marijuana was, filthy. Hippies use back door. Now I got my father, PhD, civil engineer, calling me, asking me about strains of marijuana. And I go, Papa, I don't smoke weed. But my arthritis. And I'm like, aren't you the person who used to say, if you caught me with marijuana, you beat the living shit out of me? And now he's slathering on all over his old ass. So let me ask you this: prostitution is a profession, it's one that's not legal in certain parts of the United States. There are jurisdictions, like outside of Las Vegas, in which you can engage in prostitution in brothels, and they're controlled. They're controlled through proper STD testing. And if you watch some of these documentaries on how the brothels are run, women actually can have consent. They don't have to have the person that walks into the brothel. They don't have to have that person. They're not forced. They're not trafficked into the experience. So the issue that we see here in the United States is that it's not organized by the government yet, but it will be. Jill Stein had, who was the Green Party, um, she was on the election ballot. She was a Green Party promoter. So, anyways, she had a good belief structure towards prostitution. You know, she really wanted to legalize prostitution. She wanted to make it so those that were actually doing it felt comfortable and felt safe. Because we're not just talking about the Johns here. We're talking about the women who choose that as a profession, right? We're talking about the women who would like to undergo STD testing that is, paid for by the state, who would like to have health care, who would like to be able to get a 401k, not hide from the feds, right? So until we moralize, we are going to immoralize, just like we did marijuana. We're going to see people go to prison. We're going to see people. Now, here's the really interesting thing. Sheriff Joe Aparo, out of Phoenix, Arizona, this motherfucker, got pardoned by Trump, right? This motherfucker would pick up prostitutes and he would give them two choices. Now, this is unconstitutional. How do I know this? Good friends of mine are girls of the night, okay? So anyways, Sheriff Joe Aparo gave them an option. Totally unconstitutional. He'd pick up these women and he'd go, well, you can either spend the night in jail and do community service and pay a large fine, which, of course, most escorts don't have any money, by the way. It's very hard to make a living in that industry. And he would say, or, this is the big or, you can go to Project Rose. Do you guys know what Project Rose was? It was literally a mind control program used to eradicate this belief of it's okay to have sex for money. It was ran by a Christian organization. So basically, under God, you would have to repent for being a whore. And they would make you sit down, just like the 12-step program, and talk about your sins. So this is unconstitutional, by the way. And this is one of the reasons why Sheriff Joe Aparo ended up the way he did. So yeah, I mean, he was picking up these women and giving them the option. Now, so again, this goes back to what's moral, what's immoral. When you ask me a question about addiction, I need to know how often you're picking up whores, escorts, prostitutes, strippers. Like if you're going every day, 5 times a day, to feed the addiction, then sure, like really, how often are you doing it? So immoral, moral, and this goes back to wanting an authority outside of yourself to tell you what's right or what's wrong. Self-trust is the key thing here with sex. Self-trust. This is how you have good sex. This is how you know you're doing good in the world. It's when you can trust yourself and your judgment, right? But I'm saying a lot of you don't have good judgment because I watch you, I observe you online and your behaviors all the time. I run analytics on all your behaviors, how you click through my posts and things of that nature. And I watch what you're looking at, the pornography that you look at on FetLife and things of that nature. And it's really interesting to me because I then sit down with groups of women, sometimes 20 to 50 at a time, and I ask them, all different ages, by the way, what is sex like with men? And they tell me the men are checked out. They're checked out. They're just not good lovers. They're not good lovers. And a lot of these women, now let's go back to the statistics I keep on repeating, 1 out of 3 people are sexually assaulted in their lifetime, right? So these women have naturally a built in fear around sex because they've been assaulted. And now they're having sex with these guys who are watching way too much porn, way too much porn. And the guys are checked out and they're like, wow, I can't even get a good orgasm. So I really want you guys to start thinking about this as a serious problem. It's an epidemic. It really is. And this is why I created a program called Hypnoerotic Massage, Sexual Energy, because I want people to come together and learn how to touch one another and what specifically to say in order to become, quite literally, the sex god inside the mind of your lover. How are you touching them? Are you rough? Are you rugged? Are you able to communicate your sexual needs or desires? It's interesting to me. It really is, because so many people are disconnected. So let's go more into uh, Tantra. Tantra itself, is thousands and thousands of years old. And if we look at Western culture and how we have epitomized sexuality down to slang terms, language controls intelligence. It really does. Language controls intelligence. So if we say bro every other sentence, hey, bro, this is very normal in California. By the way, I have a 28-year-old roommate who calls me bro. And I look at her and I go, yeah, bro. You know? So we have to kind of watch our language around sexuality. And this is a beautiful thing about Tantra because there's actually different names and meanings for sexual organs. So it's not a pussy, cunt, cock, it's a vajra, yoni, right? So it has a deeper connotation because when we think about yoni, remember I wanted to talk about yoni power. And this is something that I learned from a beautiful, beautiful tantrika named Layla. Layla was the first woman to ever female ejaculate. We call that Amrita and Tantra. Female ejaculate on television. And she did it in a cup and in front of 30 people on a talk show, and they all drank from it. Or I don't know if they drank from it. I think that, but I think she was drunk when she told me they drank from it. But and so I don't know. But they all looked at it because it's a viscous type fluid. It's not urine. And she's like, I wanted to show them the difference between urine and female ejaculation from the Skene's gland. And this is a woman, she was in all of Dr. Carol Queen's pornography. And most of you guys don't know that because you're all in OnlyFans bullshit, But we're talking about good film producers. We're talking about good educational content. So anyway, so she was telling me, mind you, I love Layla. I have known her since I've been a young woman. She is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my entire life. She has the most beautiful energies and the most supple breasts, and she's just gorgeous. She's in her 50s now. She remained beautiful throughout her lifetime because she does Tantra. And she's not married. She has multiple men that frequent her, and she owns her own home. She has a horse ranch. And she's done very well for herself in the sex industry. So my question to all of you is, do you know what meaning you have when you say the word cock? Are you making pictures in your mind? What are the definitions you hold in your mind when you think about pussy, cock, ass, like whatever words you use repetitively for sexuality? I was looking through one guy's post. He likes queening. I was like, what the fuck is queening? What does that mean? Is he actually experiencing it in real life, or is he watching these OnlyFans content creators and their definition of queening? Because understand, what is a belief? Do you guys know what a belief is? It's repetitive processes of thinking. That's how it consolidates down into a generalization, and we call that a belief. So it's repetitive processes of thinking consolidated down into a generalization, and that is a belief. So, I mean, I could create something called, and it could be like a dildo in one ear, a dildo in the ass, a dildo up my nose, and it'd be and they're gonna be like, oh man, have you seen blah 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 blah? Language is everything in sexuality, and I mean, and then we end up, maybe blah, blah, blah gets really popular. And now all of a sudden everyone's saying blah, blah, blah instead of bro. And so you call home and like your 20-year-old son goes blah, 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 and you go blah, 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 back to him. And it becomes this, normal everyday fucking conversation because blah, blah, blah got popular. So how are we forming our beliefs? How are we forming popularity? All of this stuff within the connotations of sexuality. Yoni, Vajra, Lingam, all of these actually have definitions that are somewhat spiritual, beautiful, all encompassing. So when I hear the word yoni, I instantly think of a rose blooming. And so when I look at a woman and I go, she has a yoni between her legs, I see a rose blooming inside of my mind. Now, can you imagine for a moment how good that feels versus seeing a cunt? Because when I see a cunt, I'm sorry, guys. I love both parties. I love Democratic parties. I love Republican parties. But I see Hillary Clinton when I say the word cunt. And I see it primarily due to the fact that she didn't stand up for herself. So I see a cunt. So cunt has a negative connotation to it, right? But when we say yoni, we think of a flower blooming, and we think of a person having this evolutionary process with their sexuality, because that's really what it's about. Because if you think about female sexuality, it's a blossoming rose. Male sexuality is the same thing. So understand we have polarities. We talk a lot about polarities in Tantra, male, female, male giving, like the yang energy, and then the yin energy of women receiving, right? Women receive the semen, the sacred sacrament, and give birth to something beautiful, right? The two portions come together, the male and female, to blossom into a new human being, which is what the world wants. It wants us to spread as a species. Everything we sexually desire is usually based on biological need to reproduce, right? But if we give it a beautiful and spiritual meaning that Tantra does, Tantra is an amazing frame. It gives you frames upon frames that are fulfilling, that give you a sense of meaning, give you a sense of spirituality, give you a sense of who you are and what you are, what your purpose on this planet is, right? But when we get into like hardcore pornography, I mean, I love hardcore pornography, by the way. I love really fucking crazy shit. I like producing it. I'm an artist. I like mind-bending experiences. I just think in your normal day-to-day life, and this goes back to really when I was polling people, asking them, well, have you ever actually experienced queening? And the guy was like, no, but I do watch a lot of videos on it. I said, I like skiing. I have never skied. I've watched a lot of videos on skiing, so therefore I am a fucking expert on skiing. I'm a skier. So once you guys know, I'm a fucking skier. Same with snowboarding. I have never snowboarded, but I have watched a lot of videos on snowboarding. Same with skateboarding. I have watched a lot of videos on skateboarding. Now I'm an expert. Now it's my fetish, by the way. It's my fetish. In fact, I just bought a bunch of skateboards, snowboards, and skis, and I put them in the corner of my room and I stare at them for hours without touching them. That's how important they are to me. That's the epitome of how most people view their fetish, their kink, right? Very few people actually get to go and experience it. I had this one guy who was like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. I'm really into anal play. I love assholes. I just fucking love assholes. Kaylee, will you take a picture of your fucking puckered starfish for me? And oh, I would just love to fucking have your asshole just right on my lips. And I said to him, Paul, his name is Paul, not you, Paul, but his name is Paul. He's a writer. And I was like, how many? Sorry, you're like, I'm a fucking writer too, asshole. So, so anyways, I go, Paul, how many women have graced, how many women's assholes have graced those lips of yours? As I smiled, twinkling, looking at his lips. And he goes, well, and I could see that he wanted to lie about his body count, right? This motherfucker probably only had two people grace those lips with their anus. But he considers himself a connoisseur of the puckered. And I said to him, I go, bro. I said, bro, you don't know asshole. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you don't know asshole. And he goes, I go, your body count's way too low. You haven't had enough puckered starfishes on those lips of yours. So this goes back to fetish and porn. And it's so funny because my girlfriend, by the way, you should go. It's the Kinky Circus. It's on the 16th. I will be performing live a stage show, an erotic hypnosis stage show. So if you come, I'm going to give you an orgasm in your pants with my words. Just words and words alone. So, anyways, the Kinky Circus is here in San Francisco. It's in a female-owned, and let me just emphasize this, black female-owned sex club. And you have to be vetted, and I'll give you guys the link to join in the comment sections below. But my girlfriend who runs this organization, sweet woman, wonderful woman, we were talking, and I go, how many people are signed up? What's the polling like? And she goes, oh, it's a bunch of newbies. I can't stand newbies. I need people who've had sex. I go, oh, man. Because what happens at a lot of these kink parties, these sex parties, the sex clubs, and I own 3, but I've consolidated and downsized and sold them out because I don't like being around anyone. I tried it. I didn't like it. Gave the concept to someone, right? Was that there was a lot of people who've never experienced anything sexual except a lap dance. And they come into the club and they sit there in the corner and they're voyeurs. They don't even jack off. You'd think, like, you go to the Power Exchange in San Francisco, there's going to be someone jacking off. At least the guy has the balls to jack off, But these people they're like, I can't touch myself, but here I'm at a sex party. But I'll go on FetLife, I'll go on all the social media related to sex, and I'll say I'm into queening. But here I am at a sex party with all these hot girls that are former strippers, porn stars, willing to do wild, kinky shit to them. Primarily, they're dominatrixes. You guys know they're all pros, right? So you guys are like, I just can't. I just can't. I'm gonna go home and look at pictures on Pornhub. I'm just gonna go play with myself because that's safe. I don't have to emotionally invest in women. And they come to these parties and you're like, what the fuck? You want to play? This is a gangbang. And there's like 10 people sitting on the fucking couch, right? And you know why they're like that? One, it goes back to they are checked out. They don't want to take self-responsibility. It's much easier to have an AI girlfriend, isn't it? Because the real one will give you shit. The real one's going to tell you how it is. The real one's going to expect you to apply yourself, right? So why get a girlfriend when you can have your thumb up your ass and pretend your AI girlfriend is your girlfriend, right? Much easier that way. Delusional, right? Delusional. So anyways, back to queening and connotations and meaning of words. So as a hypnotist, as a linguist, I study these things and the semantics behind things. And I just find it so amusing to me. I really do. Because, here's the real secret. The secret that you're going to want to really listen to. You have the power to actually change. You have the power to learn at your fingertips. You have the power to create meaning at your fingertips. You just have to start questioning everything that you're fed. You have to start questioning your beliefs. And that's so easy. I'm going to talk to you guys about some beliefs that I once had. Very simple. So I grew up in Wisconsin. I tell this story a lot because it's really fucking ridiculous and it's true. So I grew up in Wisconsin. Dad was a civil engineer professor at UW Madison. Mom was an artist and nurse. And they had a hobby farm. They thought it'd be cool, because they moved. My dad was a transplant from the East Coast. Mom's from Sweden, right? They thought it'd be cool. They're like, oh, we're in Wisconsin. Let's go out and, let's go out and actually have this hobby farm with fucking Holstein and Jersey cows. And mom loved to fuck with me. Okay? She tells me, she goes, you see those brown cows over there? My mom's a heavy smoker. That woman smokes like a pack and a half a day, so there was like a cigarette hanging out of her lips. And I go, yeah, those brown cows. She goes, that's where chocolate milk comes from. And I said, oh wow, and I'm like this kid who like walked around in bikinis and like cowboy boots on the farm, like kicking gravel and playing with like cats, like what you see on farms in the middle of nowhere, wondering like, is this life? So I get to school. It's kindergarten. And the chocolate milk comes, and I'm sitting there with all my girlfriends. I go, hey, Abigail. And she goes, what? And I go, you're drinking Jersey cow milk. And she goes, what do you mean? And I go, chocolate milk comes from the Jersey cows. She goes, no, they don't. It comes from chocolate. Chocolate is a bean. And I go, fuck you. No, it's not. I swear I had such a fight that my mom had to come get me at school and then explain to me chocolate is from the chocolate bean. I go, bitch, you lied to me. You fucking lied to me. I thought chocolate milk came from the Jersey cows. So you at one time believed silly shit. I know you did. You believed that Santa Claus was real. The Easter Bunny dropped some fucking eggs on the ground that hatched into cash and, candy. And we all believed these things, but there was a part of you at some point that started doubting, right? You guys all doubted something. Like recently, a friend of mine said that he was married and that he killed this person in a 7-Eleven. And I did a background search and there was no death at 7-Eleven. I was like, I guess I'm never going to believe everything he says again. Right? So we want to start doubting the realities that we live. We want to start doubting these social networks that are all interlinked on the internet around sexuality, because what's real is going to be flesh and fucking blood. Okay? Is that girl that you pick up on Hinge, Tinder, or Facebook, if you're good at it, which 90% aren't, that's fucking real. Okay? That's going to be your first step to changing, is to recognize what you're seeing online. And unfortunately, being who I am, I take place in this online world. But I am as real as, a heart attack. And that's why I'm inviting you guys to come join me at my events. We have events all over. We are going to be teaching a lot of sexual energy, a lot of hypnotic touch, the art of erotic hypnotic touch, addictive language patterns. Now, I say addictive language patterns, and that's primarily to use your touch in a way that gets beyond your lover's critical factor. The critical factor with a lover is going to be those layers of trauma, that sexual trauma. And you're going to need to pierce through it or go under it or over it, and you're going to need to blossom her. Does that make sense? And the same thing goes for women. I mean, imagine all of the conditioning, all the conditioning men have received over the years. They don't think they're adequate. They think they're fat. They think their dick is small. They think their dick is too large. They think they're incompetent. They think that they're stupid. They think that, they're ugly. I mean, men are the ones, if you go to the gym, almost all of the people in the gym are men beating their bones and their flesh with weights, right? They got something they got to beat themselves up about, right? So they, it's not even about perfecting the physique. How do I know this? Come on, guys. I have a PhD experiential psychology. I have a PhD in sports physiology. I'm a competitive bodybuilder, competitive athlete, and I'm telling you right now, it's just at the gym earlier today. I didn't see any women. I was in Oakland. I looked around. I saw some really good-looking brothers. But I looked around and I said, "Man, these men are fucking killing it today." Right? And they're all zoned in. They're in some form of trance. They're listening to their headphones. Excuse me. And they're taking this physical abuse called bodybuilding, weightlifting, and it's primarily to reassociate themselves into the physical form that they are. Like they're trying to get into state, get into body. Because most of the time, we're on these fuckers right here. We're disassociated. We're not fucking living the reality that is contextual around us. We're not fucking third dimensional anymore. We're fucking in some kind of meta fucking world of the internet shit show, right? And how are we going to have good sex when we're, doing that? I think a lot about that, right? I think a lot about people choosing this virtual space versus their bedroom, their bed, their wife, you know, their lovers, the potential of having someone in person, a lover in person, connected. So I'm going to leave you guys with a very special gift. Black Friday is coming up. Black Friday is coming up. It really is. We got an event in San Francisco in Burlingame, actually, which is right by the airport. Excuse me. I have a dry throat from talking to you guys all today. But we have this upcoming event on hypnoerotic massage. I need you to be vetted if you want to be a part of this. That means you need to do an interview process with me. We have women and men and trans coming. I don't care how you gender identify. You need to be over 18. Okay? There will be consent forms for you to fill out. Now, I said Black Friday's coming up, so that means we are offering this for 50% off until Black Friday. We need to interview you. Normally, I would sell this event for $1,297. You're not going to pay $1,297. Now, this is a 2-day event. We have multiple speakers coming on sexuality and seduction. I'm going to be showing you hands-on how to touch men and women, their erogenous zones, their nerve mapping, which most people don't really understand physiology, but nerve mapping is really important. And the very sneaky language patterns that make them feel really comfortable and override any kind of sexual trauma. So your lover melts in your hands and doesn't fight with you. How wonderful would that be, right? So this is December 7th and 8th at the Marriott in Burlingame, right by the airport, so it's easy to get to. This is primarily for the community of San Francisco. If you would like to come and you're outside of San Francisco, that is fine. You still need to be vetted, again, over 18. So you're not going to pay $1,297. You're not going to even pay $900. I think we're giving it away for $497. You can do like multiple payments if you need to. That's fine. Ria will take care of you. She is at schedule at hypnosisforsex.com. She has her own line. She is the manager to the business. She's been with me. You guys known Ria for very long. She's been with me for over 14 years as my office manager. And she's a wonderful, wonderful human. And I just ask that you guys be very respectful to her. Again, I want you guys to actually learn in person. It's very important that you learn this stuff in person and get off the internet. We'll be going on tour. We'll be in Chicago in late December. We'll be in West Palm Beach, Florida. We'll be in Ashland, Oregon. We'll be in Phoenix, Arizona in January. I believe we'll be in Maui, Kahului, Maui, March 1st. And then we're heading over to London and Berlin, Germany, and Melbourne, Australia. So I look forward to having you guys at this event again. If you want, I will give you a very wonderful gift. I'll give you guys a book. Just help me out with shipping. It is on hypnoerotic massage. It's about 300 pages. All you have to do in the comments below is say, hey, Kaylee, I would like a copy of the book. Or you can DM me and I'll get you the book. Okay. Now, again, this is hands on. That means that this is blood, sweat, and tears. This is the frontline, buddy. So when you come to my events, you're going to experience things. So you need to sign a consent form. Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching. Again, start questioning everything you believe. And thank you, Freddie from Florida, for your question. Okay. This is sexdoc.tv. I am Dr. Keely Dubois from hypnosisforsex.com.